Hi, I'm Steve Kilbey from the church, and you're listening to Soundwood's Central Podcast.
Hi, I'm John Fleming for SoundwordCentral.com. 2023 marks the 35th anniversary of the church's best-selling album, Starfish. The Australian alternative rock band's fifth studio offering produced the international hit Under the Milky Way, which peaked at number 22 in the band's homeland and number 24 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US, while also charting in Canada, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and the UK. The song won Single of the Year in 1989, as presented by the Australian Recording Industry Association. But the church isn't a band that's living in the past. Much more recently, the psychedelic dream pop group released its 26th studio album, the Hypnogogue, this February. Though something new, the record feels right at home with the band's early output, with an atmospheric new wave aesthetic and cleverly layered arrangements. The Hypnogogue is the church's first ever concept album, imagining a Blade Runner-esque dystopian future and wondering how music will be made in the year 2054. Joining me now at Del Mar Hall in St. Louis, Missouri, is the church's vocalist and bassist Steve Kilbey. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, hello, people. Here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah, I am.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
So what was it that inspired you to do a concept album now, after more than 4 decades as a band?
Well, it wasn't going to be a concept album, and then as I started making it, it started turning into one. And bit by bit, I started singing stuff I didn't understand why I was singing these words. I didn't know what it was all about. And then I sort of started having a conversation with, I don't know what it is that gives me my ideas, if it's the universe or if I do have a muse or something. And the conversation, the thing's going, Steve, this is a concept album, and this is the story. And the story started coming to me more and more, and the more I thought about it, and then I would put a bit more of that into the songs. And then at the end of it all, the songs that didn't fit, I made them fit. Like some of the songs really aren't anything to do with the story. But I was watching that movie. I watched it twice, Once Upon a Time in America, and there's some great bits in that where there's things happen that aren't anything to do with the story. Like I think Brad Pitt and a little girl have this conversation.
And
it's sort
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
And yeah. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And it's like, and I think in stories, there's room in stories for things that don't really have any place in the story, but they're sort of things that give color to the story that aren't actually part of it. So some of the songs are kind of like, they're not really part of a sequential series of events. They're just sort of accessories to the story.
So it's just more about world building rather than having one direct narrative.
Kind of. Like there's a song, for example, it's like, okay, in my life, I notice like I might go to a city like St. Louis and I'll walk down the street and I'll look in a window and I'll see something and I'll sort of look at that and go off into a reverie and so on this album, imagining that the protagonist in the story is just really me. For example, he's in a taxi and he hears this song comes on the radio, and that is the song Flickering Lights. It's like, this is a song the guy heard while he was on his way to work in the Hypnogogue. It's sort of like little bits and pieces of the story. Sometimes there's like it doesn't all make sense, and it doesn't happen sequentially. It's just all a feeling. And I focus in on minutiae, the small things that happen, the stones on the ground and the clouds in the sky. And you know what I mean? It's not all about, and then he did this and then he did that. It's more like he thought this and he thought that and he wondered and he puzzled. So, yeah.
Sort of just about the feeling of going through life and through his own experiences.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you feel that the sort of the dreamy feel of the music helped to make science fiction kind of a natural sort of subject matter for the lyrics of the record?
It is. The church has never been about, I love my baby, I love drinking, I love driving my car and getting in a fight, or, I want to rock or roll and party. It's always been about fantastical things. It's supposed to be sort of something marvelous or magical. It's supposed to not be about ordinary sort of emotions. And so, yes, but the idea of having a sort of a science fiction story going along behind this, I think, fits in perfectly.
So on the record, there's a lot of influences of kind of classic rock artists like
Yeah.
Pink Floyd or David Bowie, who
Yeah.
have, not only concept albums, but a very spacey kind of feel to their
Uh-huh.
music. What influence did those artists have? And are there some other artists that you feel you were tapping into with this record?
Those people, well, obviously David Bowie and Pink Floyd and the Beatles had a huge influence on me. Also remember with this record, it's about this machine that pulls music out of somebody's head. So the machine might be not very, it might be indiscriminate which music it pulls out. So I felt that the concept of the album, because it's a machine pulling music out of people's heads, I've just let all my influences run riot in a way I probably never would have before. I mean, I always loved David Bowie and always wanted to sort of be like David Bowie and write David Bowie-like songs. But in the past, I would try and sort of cover that up a bit more. Whereas with this record, I've just it's just all come out. And I think that the Hypnogogue, the idea of that sort of helps to justify letting my influences just let them go. I mean, that's, I am just all my influences mixed up together. And then I sort of mix them all up in my head, all the things I love about music, and roll it all out on this album.
So in that way, it sounds like this album, while it is a little bit different in the sense that it's a concept album, it's also just kind of a logical continuation of the work you've been doing for decades.
It is. I mean, obviously there are artists, and like David Bowie for one, who would completely change. He'd be this, and then the next album be something else. And then with me, I find you can draw a line through all our albums. There's no, and there never will be. Even if I make music to 100, I'm always going to be plowing this same field every time. This dream pop, psychedelic, surrealist, space rock, whatever the hell it is, I will always do this. I was doing it back then. I did it all through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and I'm still doing it. And it's sort of like, the trick is to have continuity and yet have change. And that's a kind of a musical conundrum. So you want to develop, you want to get better, and you want to change, but you don't want to be completely different to what you used to be at the same time.
So you've said that this album was like a teamwork record. What was the process?
Like a what record?
Like a teamwork record?
Yes.
So what was that process like as far as the creation of the album?
Well, it was like everybody could say, I like this or I don't like it to anybody else. Anybody could pick up any instrument. Ash Naylor, who's the newest addition of the band, he plays drums, he plays piano, he plays bass, he plays guitar. All over the record, he's playing. Anyone could play whatever instrument they like. Anyone could say, I like this or I don't like it. And everybody, we worked hard and we focused, and we had I remember making the last song on the record, which is Second Bridge. And we really, all five of us sat there and examined every parameter in that song. And we all thought about, what can we do? How can we make this a bit different? So everybody had an equal say. And then at the end, because somebody has to be in charge, even when you have a democracy, someone at the end has to go. So after we had all that goodwill and teamwork, at the end, I had to put that all together, with consultation. But in the end, I made all the decisions. In the band, as it used to be, we had a few guys who didn't particularly, they were amazing guitarists and great players, they didn't always want to do what I wanted to do. And I guess that's sort of what happened that with the Beatles as well. You can see, if you watch the Beatles movie, especially Paul wants something from the other guys that he can't seem to get, even when they're trying to give it. He's going, oh, no, it's just not right. They're going, Paul, what do you want us to do? And he's, oh, he doesn't know what he wants. I sort of had that with the other guys. They didn't want to contribute the way this band does. This band wants to be a team. This band realizes, it's true. It's like a sporting team. You're only as good as your weakest link. You're better off to have guys who are all focused on the same thing than to have 10 Johnny superstars who are just like, oh, I don't care what you want. I'm just going to do whatever I like. So that's what I mean. Everybody in the band was dedicated to making this record in a very cohesive, non-argumentative way. And if someone said to me, hey, Steve, I don't really like what you're doing right there, then I knew they were talking about what I was doing. It didn't have all this subtext of like, in the old band, if someone said, I don't like what you're doing, what that really meant was 5 years ago, you stole my girlfriend, or you trod on my toes, or, you know what I mean? There was all this meaning to it. Nowadays, there's no meaning. There's just like, so we had the most honest communication, which was really good, because I don't want to be in a studio. I don't want to be creating and trying to be a psychoanalyst to a whole load of people with problems. That's really tiring when you've got an idea and you're just trying to get it down and people go, I don't know why I should do this. And then you've got to convince them. We didn't have that. We had, let's get to work. What are we going to do? And the way it worked was everybody came up with things. Some of the songs are more one person than others, like each person sort of has a song that they were very much the driving engine behind.
So would you say that the album then was, I guess, more collaborative than previous albums, or is it just a different type of collaboration?
It's more collaborative, more willing. It was always collaboration. There was, okay, I don't know how much you know about, how old are you? This band was going 20 years before you were even born.
I'm 34.
Okay. Once upon a time, there was just me, and I wrote all the songs, and I had 3 players, and I came in and said, can you do this, and you do this? And that was great. We had 4 albums, and then one day I went, this is really stupid. You guys are so brilliant. Why am I telling you what to do? We should all do this together. And I brought them into the creative process, and that was fine for a while. And then I guess, if you have any bunch of guys together for 40, and even a family, I've got a little brother that I love, and we had an argument once and we didn't talk for 4 years. That's what happens in bands as well. So this was, and it could still happen with this if it keeps going. Eventually someone will get out of joint. But it was more pleasant to make this, and I felt like when I would ask someone's opinion, or when someone else asked mine, that we could be more honest with each other.
So you referenced earlier the fact that this sort of was a concept album, like almost by accident, like you were kind of writing towards, and then it sort of became one.
Yeah.
Would you consider like writing more within this world, or making a different concept album, or is that just sort of a thing that's going to come up? This
is really interesting. This is a very salient question. We have these guys really interested in us. We don't have any management. We had some big shot manager in LA Zoom us last night. And he said, I really like this story. And I said, do you? And he went, yeah. He said, man, if only it was a book. And I said, that's really strange, because I started writing this novella about it. And I went back last night and I opened up my computer and read it. I haven't read it for a while. I thought, wow, it's not too bad. So maybe they're talking about this management company are talking about, we should re-release this record as a deluxe edition. There's 4 or 5 tracks that didn't make it onto the album. And he said, if you have a novella that could come with it as well, that would be amazing. So we're going to flesh it out. If there is the novella, we definitely have the other tracks. So there will be, if people like this Hypnogogue thing, that there will be more. I'm going to flesh it out a bit more. If Ridley Scott rang me up and said, "Hey, I want to make this into a movie," I'd be, or a Netflix series, I'd jump in. I would love to take that. I'd love to take it around kindergartens. But on the same token, if that's the end of it, that's the end of it, and I'll happily move on to something else.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting that further explorations of the world may not be through the exact same medium as your previous ones. If you're novellas or scripted television, film.
Look, I think I'm a really good lyricist. I found being a good lyricist does not mean you're a good writer, because lyrics, the lyric world is a really funny world, because songs can be, I'm this and I do that, and then suddenly it can be you, and suddenly she, and suddenly it's in the future and it's in the past, and then you're bringing in things that got nothing to do with it, and the listener goes, yeah, I can dig that. You do that in a book, and people go, what? What the hell is that? So lyrics are so much easier to write, and I'm finding that trying to write this little book, it's a lot harder. Being a lyricist is just different to being a poet. It's different to being a journalist or an essayist. And then you've also got the music that holds it all up. So you could just have a line, I love you, baby. Doesn't look very good on paper. You have that with the right piano and violins and stuff, and you bring grown men to their knees crying. So you always got to remember, as a lyricist, you have all these other things and the actual singing of it and stuff. So something that might not look so good on paper can really come to life when it's sung and with all the instruments.
Sure. Yeah.
I know that isn't what you really asked me, but what the hell?
Yeah, it's great to hear it. I'm certainly happy to hear whatever insights you have. And, perhaps part of the reason that you're, feel very at home writing lyrics is because you've been doing it for so long.
I've been doing it for so long. I was sitting down the back of the class writing lyrics and drawing pictures of guys playing guitars when I should have been learning my lessons. I have wanted to be a songwriter my whole life, and I've been working on lyrics. I've been working on everywhere I go. I've got my ears open if I hear a phrase. If I'm sitting on a bus and I hear someone behind me say something, I'll go, I'm taking that. So I'm going through the world like a whale swimming through the ocean, sucking in phrases and storing them in my head. So lyrics is really what I'm all about. I'm more than anything else. I am a lyricist. Yes.
And so it's very much a rare thing to have a career that spans for 4 decades, 26 albums, and going, of course. Could you have predicted this kind of run in 1980 when the band formed?
My ambition was to play in Melbourne. We formed in Sydney, and Melbourne was like 600 miles away. And my ambition was to get one single out and go down to Melbourne and do a tour, like play a gig in Melbourne. And I thought, if we can do that, if I can get a single and we can go to Melbourne and play, I'll feel like that's it. Now I'm ready to settle down and do something else. I had no idea it was going to turn into all of this. I really didn't.
I would say that you certainly accomplished your goal of reaching Melbourne.
We got to Melbourne. And then we got to Melbourne, Florida as well.
Yeah, you made it all the way to St. Louis too.
And St. Louis.
And many other places along the way as well. So thank you very much for joining us. The Church's new album, The Hypnogogue, is available now. For more information, visit thechurchband.net. For soundwordcentral.com, I'm John Fleming. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, guys.